Jen, how are things going from the set tonight?
Things are going swimmingly from the set tonight.
Where are you actually? Where are you right now?
As far as where I am on the planet, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Man, that seems to be the hotbed for all kinds of TV stuff.
It sure is.
Wow.
You know, it's like a petri dish for television.
I like that petri dish. You know what? Jen Lynch, welcome to the Horror Happens radio show here on Homegrown Radio, and a huge part of Women in Horror. I can't tell you how many people are listening right now and appreciate the time you're taking out to talk about your film work here on the show tonight, live and uncensored. Can
I say something really quick?
By all means, young lady.
You have no idea how much it means to me that anybody wants to hear me say anything about anything, especially about my film work. So I'm so grateful to any and all of you that are listening.
Man,
I think what you're doing is great.
Thank you. Jen, it means the world to me for you to say that, because I look at your body of work and it's spanned a couple generations, and you as a filmmaker have really come from different perspectives over the years. And there's a few films especially that I pull out of your body of work, because you've done TV, you've done independent cinema, you've done a wide variety of stuff. Hell, I mean, everyone knows the lineage you have, but Eraserhead being the little girl in it, I mean, you go back so long ago with your fingerprint in horror film and very unique film. But let's jump right into it. What is your obsession, if I may ask frankly, with Munchausen syndrome? It seems Unchained, Boxing Helena. What is it with it?
What the hell is it with me and Munchausen syndrome? Well, the funny thing is, I do love saying the word, and I am fascinated with the syndrome. But I would say it's a strange coincidence. Yeah. That so many of my film subjects have dealt with immobility or capture. Wow. The one thing I can tell you I gravitate towards in those, moments is that human beings cannot do what they ordinarily do, and therefore something new is going to happen.
Interesting. So
it's not that I want to trap everybody, or that I'm obsessed with being hobbled. It's more what is the human monster, and when things go sort of shit sideways, you've got to think differently, and that's what fascinates me about the human spirit. And we build the human monster, and I sort of wanted to look at that in Chained, and I wanted to look at sort of sociopathy in surveillance, and what is truth and versions of truth, and what happens if you can't leave a room? What happens if you can't get up and walk away? What happens if someone takes you? And how do you relate? How do you continue to be human in what feels like an inhuman situation?
And you can look at that in so many of your works, even the TV shows you work on, Jen. I go back, and I asked Julian Sands this just last year at Monster Mania. What was the idea, and what was the trust relationship you had to have with doing Boxing Helena? Boxing Helena, for those who have not seen, it is one of the most bizarre yet beautifully art house films you're going to find, and it's based around the object of obsession and the aspect of dreams and the aspect of what you would do and how you fall deep into that dark pit of obsession and love to some people. Start back there. Talk about Boxing Helena and where that idea came from with such a bizarre and beautiful film.
Well, let's see. God, I love that people are, anybody is talking about Boxing Helena again. I think that, that film certainly had a hard birth.
I have no doubt.
The idea, I used to read poetry weekly at a place, with a group called Poetry in Motion. That group still exists, but I was approached one night after reading by a gentleman who asked me if I would write a screenplay, if I'd be interested in it, and it was about a man who removed a woman's arms and legs and put her in a box. And I said, that doesn't really appeal to me. But what did
Yeah.
was the fact that the image I got from that was of the Venus de Milo.
Oh, wow. Okay. Makes sense.
My grandmother had a small version of the Venus de Milo in her house, and I was born with very severely clubbed feet and was in sort of a bar and a brace, and was often sat on the floor and watched people walk by this statue and look at her as if she was beautiful even though she was broken. And there was something about the idea that if that statue were in a young boy's house and it was the only thing that didn't walk away from him or abuse him, he would then think of it as a perfect thing.
Wow.
And so when we obsess over things, you know, we sort of go into this fairy tale world of, you know, dreams and wishes and magic, and what would happen if we could make out of this cruel Snow White beauty a Venus de Milo who would never leave and who would love us and be gentle. And so, you know, like someone says, in a dream you were there and then suddenly you were gone. Things, you know, appear and disappear as needed by the dreamer. And what I wanted to look at was, you know, what are the choices we make, and how do dreams work as therapy so that we don't actually go around cutting each other up.
I was going to say that's an understatement to what Boxing Helena is, and it's interesting. The more that you watch this film, and I've seen this film several times over the years. It's has one of the most erotic sex scenes I've ever seen on film. And one of the most obsessive sex scenes I've ever seen on film. But to mention you and go back to what you said about the dream aspect of it, Jen, when you wrote Boxing Helena, what I guess kind of safeguards did you put in place to make sure that the dream world and the real world did not conflict with each other, and it kind of held true to you don't really realize it's a dream until you're finished watching this film?
Right. Well, I mean, you know, at least in my dreams, very rarely do I think in the middle of them, I'm dreaming.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm getting what I want.
Very true.
And, you know, I was 19 when I wrote it, so I had, I think, a sense of still lingering in the joy of fairy tales and also in the impossibility of them.
Yeah.
So it was sort of Prince Charming who had been abused, and Snow White, who was far more cruel than any Snow White we'd ever known. And could they be together? And what does love look like? And, you know, ultimately, do you really want to disassemble someone to make them love you? No. If you really love them, you want them to be whole and you want them to be okay. I think that there wasn't as much, you know, caution in making the dream world and real world the same as much as it was try to create everything in as much a believable way as possible, knowing that you're in a sort of fairy tale.
Wow.
So that if the whole shape of everything feels like this vibe, this is the voice of the story. It's very fairy tale. The shots are framed this way. People behave this way. They say things in this tone.
Yeah.
The colors are this. Then, you know, that's what the world looks like, and nobody knows any different until we leave it.
Man, and it's such an ending, and for some people that I've talked to, the ending, people feel that it's kind of a letdown for people. I personally don't. I like the ending because you really kind of find out where everything is coming. It ties it up really nicely. I have no issue, Jen, with the dream aspect of the sequence because the film is such a powerful film throughout the progression of it that it's kind of a calm after this humongous storm that has come to basically engulf you with it. One of the things, though, and this is a big for Boxing Helena, is the performances of Julian Sands and Cheryl Finn. Talk a little bit about casting those two and bringing them in to this world of Boxing Helena.
They were both such gifts. I mean, you know, there was so much that went on with the false starts for Boxing Helena. First it was Madonna and Ed Harris. And then Madonna, you know, very kindly had to back out, you know, for reasons I probably shouldn't mention. And then, but
Fair
she
enough.
paid us every cent back. And then we went again with Kim Basinger, and then that whole trial thing happened. And it was no one's intention to force anyone to do anything, but it was certainly our intention to say, let's not pretend you didn't say you were going to. We're ready to shoot, and the prosthetics fit you. Let's not kid ourselves. So, with that, it was sort of like there was this weird thing where everything seemed to be falling apart, and yet what was revealed was what was meant to be. Michelangelo talks about how the statues are inside the marble. He just sets them free, and all that chipping away. And it did feel like everything was deconstructing, and we were never going to succeed. And suddenly I was faced with Sherilyn Fenn and Julian Sands, and they were perfect. It was Prince Charming and Snow White.
Yeah.
And they both were, in ways I don't know that I can express, so brave and so trusting of me. And it was the first time I picked up a camera. I really thought 5 people would see this movie, and I hoped 3 would like it. I had no idea it was going to be this big a deal. And I just wanted to tell the story. And I wanted to make sure it wasn't a torture porn horror film, that it was a telling of, how you yearn to keep someone, and how once you realize you're stripping away at them, that's not really what you want if you do indeed love them.
Man.
And and so I know a lot of people thought the dream was a letdown, and yet for me the dream is the whole point. The dream is, that's the humanity in it. It's not the alarm goes off because I didn't know how to fucking end the thing. The point is, what's interesting is that, see, he did it differently.
Man.
And Julian, bless his heart, I kept having to sort of say, you're getting too frightening. I can't have you be that frightening. It's got to be a different, like the one who was in control the whole time was the woman in the box.
Yes.
And so it was, he really put his trust in me, and I adore him for that. And Sherilyn really put her trust in me, and it's amazing how much I think she didn't even realize she depended on her appendages for strength and balance. It's very hard to just be this thing, this disassembled human, and to still feel sensual and strong. And yet she found it, and there it was. And I'm forever grateful. It was a magical thing, and I'm actually working with 3 of the crew members right now who worked on Boxing Helena, because we shot here in Atlanta, and they're on this TV show with me.
Wow. Hey, it's a hell of a reunion when it comes to it. I'm here with Jennifer Lynch on the Horror Happens radio show. We're discussing Boxing Helena, Chained, women in horror, a whole lot, and we appreciate everyone listening out there, and we thank you here on Homegrown Radio. When you look at it, your films, Jen, are very much visual pieces, whether it's the captivity of Chained, whether it's the aspect of surveillance, or you're looking at the style and the beauty, and yet the prison to a certain extent of Boxing Helena. Visuals have always been something you've excelled at, whether it's part of a team or on your own. Talk a little bit about the aspects and the importance of visuals when it comes to your work, and where it sits on the list of priorities when you create a film.
Oh, man. Film is a visual medium, period. And I think that audiences are far more wise than they are often treated. And something as simple as an open palm, means, a lot to all of us. It's, here, have this, or please give me this. And it all depends on the shape of the hand and what it looks like and how quickly or slowly it moves and what's surrounding the hand, And so how you say those things visually is so exciting to me. It's sort of, there's something about someone stirring their coffee with their middle finger versus their pointer finger.
True.
That says a lot about them. So all of that is in the story to me. And so, I sort of set things up in my head, at least, as far as what do I want them to see, what do I want to tell them looks a certain way, and what do I want to let them wonder about.
Man.
I think some of the sexiest things and some of the most frightening things are things I don't see.
It leaves
so
it to the mind.
I really want the audience to be able to have that for themselves. Hearing someone scream in the next room and hearing awful noises is a lot more frightening to me than seeing someone be tortured.
If I may interrupt you for 1 second, but you do signify one thing within your films. You always have that one signature item or visual that is so significant that's right in the face, whether it's the Venus de Milo or the chain that represents in the film Chain, that bed, that chain that goes along with it. You seem to bring out one particular aspect as a centerpiece, at least in my perception, Jen, of within your films. I do agree with you, though, however, about the aspect of what you don't see, because that can be more erotic or terrifying or emotional than anything you could see for a full 90 minutes of film.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. It's not to say that I don't say, here's what the subject is, or here is the drawstring to the bag, here's the connective tissue.
I like
this
that.
is what this is about.
Yeah.
But as far as, do I need to see, I try to be very particular about what I show and what I don't show, because it's once I've said this is what it looks like, I've then taken away the power for everybody else. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, sometimes it's sexier to not see the girl lift her blouse up and to just see that she does it, and then see everybody else's reactions. It's like, oh my God, were they amazing? Because they'll never be the boobs you think they are.
Yeah.
But if they stay in that sort of like nether world of the perfect boobs, then everybody sees the boobs they want to see.
Yeah.
And you can never, if you open the closet and show me the monster, it'll never be as scary as what I'm thinking it is.
Wow. Man.
Because a monster to me is a very particular thing. But I'm also the kid who, I used to hold my hand down, to the space under my bed at night, so that, if the monster under there wanted to hold my hand, it could, because I figured anything that was hiding was more afraid than I was.
Wow. Hey, that's a hell of a philosophy. Holy shit.
I wouldn't want to be under the bed.
Yeah.
I figured that poor guy, was terrified.
Yeah.
So just in case, here's a hand.
Man. Let's jump real quick, and this is a great segue from Boxing Helena to Chained. Two movies that are the opposite sides of the coin when it comes to captivity, when it comes to violence, when it comes to sex. And I think sex is one of the things, again, you direct very well. You have great timing with it. You have a great way of framing it. You have a great beauty to it and a great ferocity to it, especially with Vincent D'Onofrio, who you make, he's a large dude, but you make him larger than life and so imposing in Chained. Talk a little bit the aspect of directing sex, whether it's romantic or ferocious, and how you come into it doing it so respectfully.
Oh, sex is a big deal. You know what I mean? Number one, thank you for saying I do it respectfully. I think that one of the things that even in dark, dangerous sex, there still in storytelling should be respect. Like, if it's dark and dangerous, that will be told. Nobody needs to be shamed or ruined. Certainly, and certainly not the actors.
Yeah.
Suffering is totally unnecessary. It has nothing to do with telling a story, even a story about suffering.
True.
So I approach sex, in the same way that I approach sort of any other thing, which is that it's a really intimate moment. I mean, a conversation is intimate between actors when you're really working with them.
Yeah.
Sharing words and making things feel like they're happening for the first time. That's really intense. And I think that getting the actors to trust enough that I'm not going to make them look silly or ugly or it's a weird thing. They're more naked because they're on camera, and yet real intimacy has nothing to do with nudity. Man. So I sort of like to play with that. That's where I get in there, and it's mainly about figuring out how to make them feel protected so that they can be really brave.
Man, bravery is such a key aspect, and the more I talk with actors and actresses about sex and filmmakers about it, it just boggles my mind, Jen, how it actually even gets off and how people find that comfort level to be able to do this on camera in an artful and respectful way. And this goes back to what you just said about what you don't see is more terrifying. Vincent D'Onofrio, who in everything he does, he's brilliant. It scares the hell out of you how brilliant an actor he is. His way that he handles the women and what happens when they go through the house, which becomes a ritual as you go through Chained, it's terrifying to know what's going on in there. And even when you see later on that you kind of get a glimpse at what's happened when one of them kind of escapes, it just blows your mind, and it's not even close to what your mind was projecting throughout Chained. What was it like directing that ferocity with Vincent D'Onofrio, especially during those scenes of the ferociousness of sex?
He is such an amazing human being. I mean, that guy he's a storm, you know, and if you're lucky enough to get in the center of it,
wow,
you know, it's a real gift. He's incredibly generous and brave, and being in those things, it's sort of like, you know, I trusted him and he trusted me, and we talked about, you know, I talked about that, you know, his character was not stupid. His character was abused. His character had been beaten about the head and spoke a certain way as a result, the same way an aged boxer might.
Interesting.
He was not simple.
Yeah.
He was working on instinct, and those instincts were born of a terrible childhood. And yet he still had those human needs. And so, you know, it was just reminding him and myself in certain scenes that he was working from a place of male sexuality, and in others where he was working from a place of a broken child who was looking for company or a friend or trying to sort of repair what was damaged. And, you know, he's so gentle. I mean, he was so careful with these girls and was able to do it in a way that looked violent, and yet, you know, we were all, you know, happy and safe and laughing in between takes. It was really amazing.
It's like a dance almost.
It really is. And he's so completely concerned with no one getting hurt at the expense of the story. You know what I mean? Like ever. And it really made people feel safe, and it made it you know, that's when real collaboration is born, is when everybody is considered and everybody is heard. And you know, shit just comes to life. And he really took care of them. It was strangely erotic in a way, because it was so, you knew underneath it that the character held these women as precious things.
Yeah.
You know, the same way the spider sees the fly. That meal is precious. What he's doing is violent, but he's treating it as if it's precious. And I knew the actor himself, the man himself, cared a great deal about the safety of these women, but had to make it look like something else. So it was really an exciting process to be a part of, and I, you know, I'm deeply indebted to him for sharing those things with me.
I'm here with Jen Lynch. We have you for a little bit longer. I have one more thought, and this connects Boxing Helena and Chained very much, and a lot of your work that you do, you see this as an underlining theme in your writing and directing. You, me, and them. That's something. As soon as I heard that, I just stopped the movie when I was watching and thought about it, because it really is in your work. It's you, me, and them, because it's me and you against the world, and that's how it seems to have been for it. I mean, a filmmaker alone, it's like that, but you bring more of a personal connection into your work, and also you bring in amazing writing, narrative skill, and filmmaking. You see that as an underlining thing. Jen, talk about that statement and the importance within your work.
You know what's funny is I think you definitely tapped into something there. You're no idiot, buddy.
Thank you. I try not to be.
Whatever. You don't know anything. Thank you, doctor. Even in surveillance, it's you, me, and them. And even in surveillance, people are stuck in a place that they can't get out of.
Yeah.
So for me, there's something really romantic and terrifying about being on your own. So in the same way that in adolescence it's like, I'm going to go do it my way. It's the subtle difference between choosing to do something alone or being forced into doing it alone or left alone. And I think that heroes are born of that. Heroes are born of tragedy and feeling less than. And don't we all wish that what was supposedly wrong with us was suddenly a superpower? Wouldn't it be nice to think that that we all mattered in a particular way? And I think we do. I think we all wake up with this amnesia that says the rest of the world doesn't feel as afraid as I do. The rest of the world isn't worried about what they look like or act like or how smart or stupid they're afraid they are or, all of this. So it's sort of like the you, me, and them. It separates us, and I think that's what keeps, politics, religions, and weight loss clinics going. But I think that's sort of part of the human nature. If we all realized we were all the fucking same, nobody would be making a lot of money off of us, and we'd all be, doing just swell. It's that weird thing that when we separate each other, the stories begin because we become afraid, and fear is a really interesting thing.
It's interesting and it can be so powerful and yet such a driving force. And let's real quick tap into the driving force that's Women in Horror Month. Talking to you, whether it's during this month or hopefully down the line in another conversation, it's tremendous to bring you in during this time, Jen, because I got to tell you, everyone that's a part of this lineup, everyone that I've talked to, the uber-most amount of respect that you can find as a filmmaker, as a woman, as a person, seeing a couple decades now of women in film, seeing the growth and transition, what does this movement mean to you and your work and as a woman within the genre of horror?
It's so funny. I totally dig that there's Women in Horror Month. I totally dig that people are out there making movies and that some of them have vaginas and uteruses. It never occurs to me. It's like I wake up a girl. You know what I mean? So I don't think I'm going to be a great girl today. It's funny to me that nobody walks up to Spielberg and Coppola or anyone else for that matter and says, "Boy, you are a great male film director." Good going on that love scene with the penis you have and all that. So it's really weird to me when someone says, "But you're a girl. How do you do this horror stuff?" Yeah. I feel like saying, "Did you go to high school? Did you see how cruel girls could be?" I mean,
true.
like, am I the only one who went to that school? And so what it means to me is hopefully there's a lot more consciousness about filmmakers in general. If the way society wants to do that is to honor and bring attention to the ones that have the uteruses, that's great. Because I do think that it should not be a surprise that women are storytellers.
True.
Grandma had a big fucking life and could tell a mean-ass story.
True.
And it should come as no surprise. So I think it's fascinating that we are surprised.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like what's exciting is, wow, the idea that, it's sort of win-win because, as a girl, you want to be considered a good girl, and as a filmmaker, you want to be considered a good filmmaker. And so I sort of hope that between the uterus and the films, I'm, to be on this show and to be a part of, Women in Horror Month, it's kind of a good thing. I do think Women in Horror Month should have a Red Week, though.
Well, you know what? It's 28 days. So days,
bring it.
Bring it. But it's interesting you say that, Jen, because you know what? And that I was just talking with Paul Sullett here on the show, and that's one thing I noticed more and more and more. And as I do, this is the second year we've done Women in Horror, and it's more than the filmmakers. It's women in all the different dark corners of horror. But the aspect that you're a woman should play nothing into the fact of putting out a great film. And that's one thing. It's equality, and it's the aspect of the great filmmaking mind. The Babadook is a primary example. how many people or how many pieces did I hear? Oh, well, Jennifer Kent's a woman director. And I went, that should have no thing on the filmmaker she is and what she puts out there. And I couldn't agree more with you on your point saying that, because it's about the film. It's about a great film. It's not about the filmmaker being a particular gender or having a particular sexual instrument that they can
Exactly.
use.
It's sort of like, the guy directed that wore a blue shirt, and it's also not like the girl who directed that doesn't have any legs. It's not a handicap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I am not, again, I'm not shocked when, a man makes a beautifully moving film.
Yeah.
So I'm completely puzzled by the fact that people are astonished when women make a very frightening film.
Yeah.
We're all human beings, and we all have that in us. And if a director's done a good job, I'm not even thinking about them while I'm watching the movie.
I agree.
So, what interests me is, the story they told, not their genitals.
If I may ask one more thing, I know that you have work to get to, and I appreciate the time. Let's go back to women in filmmaking just for a second. I don't mean to hash on, but the XX series.
Yes.
Again, it's another anthology of filmmakers, and it seems these are more popular, especially in the last decade. They become more and more of a platform for filmmakers, whether the younger generation, older generation, experienced, less experienced, whatever you want to call it out there to be, Jen. This series is another interest. This time, it's all female directors. Put that aside. How has the experience of XX been to create these stories on this platform that you have now?
I think it's been really fascinating, and I'm looking forward to getting into actually shooting mine.
Yeah.
And it's for me it's put way too simply, it's a really great way to promote a film that would be good no matter who was working on it, because people who love horror, and storytellers who get films made are usually great ones. But I think that what's interesting about it is that for me the challenge is finding a way to trust that my story will not conflict with any of the other stories, because we don't know what the other is doing, and also find a way to work in the space of a short film, which is so nice. It's like having a brief conversation with someone and yet leaving them with goosebumps. So,
Nice.
You don't have all the time in the world. You have only these few moments. And I do a lot of experimenting with short story writing. I give myself 6 to 8 minutes to write my little night walk stories when I photograph trees and such. And that's all just sort of stream of consciousness stuff. And I think that this is like a real experiment in that, where I just want to be a part of something that restricts me in the right ways. And now we're back to this whole bondage and I can't leave and restriction thing. But don't get your smarty pants on there, buddy.
Hey, you're throwing the ideas out there, Jen.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pay you for this session. I can see how this is.
The ghost would appreciate that.
It turns out I'm really sick. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Some people's perceptions might be that,
But I do like what I think is dangerous about too much freedom.
Yeah.
Is that there's no, I don't know. It's like if it never got dark at night, you'd never have to go home and stop playing. So what makes going outside and playing fun is that at some point it's going to end for the day.
Yeah.
And so it's finite. And so I like this sort of restriction of you only have this many minutes.
Man.
There's 4 of you. And, universe willing, all of your stories will somehow work together.
Jen Lynch, fearless student, creator, whatever words you want to use to describe your work, just want to brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And there is so much out there, Jen. I mean, the conversations alone that are to come, I look forward to wholeheartedly. But real quick, how's TV treating you?
TV is amazing. TV is so much fun.
Wow.
TV is brave, and TV is fast and scrappy.
Scrappy, great word.
And it's down and dirty, and it reminds me of independent filmmaking.
Yeah.
I'm doing 6-day episodes on this, and getting 54 pages shot in 6 days is
wow.
it's a doozy of
That's
a thing,
insane.
and it's great crews, and it's collaboration, and I love the work. I
Wow.
love it.
Jen, get back to work, and we look forward to the next conversation, my dear.
I would really be honored to talk to you again, and thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the time, and I appreciate, especially during this time of the month. No pun intended. No pun
Right?
intended. Yeah. Jen,
It's the full moon, damn it.
I know it couldn't be any better of a time, if I may say
Right?
so.
I'm just going to get back to gnawing on this corpse in my office, and then.
My God, you are in Atlanta after all. It is Walking
I
Dead
am.
territory, so it is
Yes,
Walking
it's a
Dead.
Southern gentleman I'm gnawing on.
Oh well, then my lady, keep on gnawing.
Right?
Oh.
I'll have some sweet tea afterwards.
There you go. Jen, be safe and keep up the great work. I'll talk to you down the line.
Fantastic. Have a great rest of your evening, and hello to everybody out there.
You too. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Jen Lynch here on the Horror Happens radio show.